We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast, everyone. This is Abe, your host. It's 7:52 a.m. Today is, I believe, the 17th? No. Wow. I'm way off. 21st. Today's now the 21st. Rent's coming up soon. Still snowy here in Kentucky. Just got off work. Working 6 days this week, but I'll try to put out as much podcast as I possibly can for you all. I actually kind of got a busy day today, going to scrape off my vehicle because we're still all snowed in here in Kentucky. I got to get the oil changed on my car tomorrow. Gonna clean around the house some. I still got some stuff to put up because we had to buy some shelves and all that. Hopefully cook some dinner tonight because I'm off today. Just little stuff like that. But today's episode, we are going to, it's not really a conspiracy, but if you've been keeping up with the channel, you know that I like to cover weird, odd, crazy stories. So if you clicked on this video, yes, we are getting into a weird, crazy story consisting of Johnny Cash, yes, the Johnny Cash, the singer, fighting an ostrich. This is a true story from his book, Cash. So I thought it was so crazy I had to share it with you all. There is a little bit of conspiratorial stuff in his book, which I'll start with that. And then we'll get into the account of him fighting an ostrich and how that turned out for him. It's a crazy story. There's actually several crazy stories in the book, so I might share some more. But yeah, we'll dig into it. Alright, so a little disclaimer. We are getting into Freemasonry. I am not an anti-Mason. Which is an actual group created by the Vatican. But I do think for the most part, and I'm going to be straight up with you, keep it 100, you know. I do think for the most part, most Masons are good people. Most Masons, lower level, just think it's a fraternity, you know. Brings them back to their college days, I guess. I do think a lot of people get some spiritual stuff out of it. Now, when you're telling me like you're a 30-something degree Mason, I'm going to start looking at you a little sideways going, what kind of skeletons do you got in your closet? Because I know the history of Freemasonry and the infiltration of the Illuminati, the actual real Bavarian Illuminati, which is a real thing. And I know their goals. So, that being said, this is the account of Johnny Cash trying to join Freemasonry. Carl had become a Mason after he got sober. And for a while, he was very eager for me to try that. Come on, John. Come with me to Hendersonsville chapter, he urged. let me introduce you to the men there. Then they can have a meeting and invite you in, and it will change your life. It'll be a wonderful thing for you." Eventually I agreed, and we went to meet the Masons. I worked my way around the room shaking hands, and I'll never forget the way those men looked at me. It was as if they were being asked to kiss a rattlesnake. Right then and there I got the feeling that I wasn't going to become a Mason. Doubtless, they had certain images in mind. It was only a couple years since I had gotten away from pills, and a little more than that since every newspaper in the country had carried a photo of me being led into jail in handcuffs after buying amphetamines from the wrong pusher. Eventually, the progress I'd made since then didn't count for much. I left the place with a less than lukewarm, "You'll be hearing from us," rolling around in my head, gathering little charged particles of embarrassment and anger, and sure enough, in a couple of weeks a letter arrived informing me that my application was rejected on quote-unquote moral grounds. I raged at the walls and ceilings for a while, and then I called Carl and raged at him, telling him I never wanted to hear another word from him about the Masons as long as I lived. I haven't. I don't know. Maybe I'd have made a good Mason. So, I've heard, within the conspiracy community, you see videos on everybody and everything. I truly believe that, I got Christian listeners, I got agnostic listeners, I've got all sorts of listeners. I've got listeners who are into witchcraft. I've got listeners who are Freemasons. I accept any and everybody here, But you get a lot of people in the conspiracy / truth community, whatever you guys want to call it. There's a lot of infighting, which is sad because united we stand, divided we fall. And you get a lot of people who just think everything is a conspiracy. I've seen anti-Johnny Cash videos on, "Oh, look, he did a song by 9 Inch Nails called Hurt. And if you watch the video, he's a Freemason, he's Illuminati, he sold his soul to the devil," and all that Bible thumping stuff. And it's like, dude, Cash literally is probably one of the most Christian musicians I've ever, listened to. I'm a big fan, and he's not a Satanist, dude. He's had a fucked up life, but he's always been open about it, But I don't know. There's his personal account on trying to join the Masons, and as you can tell, they rejected him and left a bad taste in his mouth. So we'll get on with the main story of this program, though, on how Johnny Cash fought an ostrich. My liberation from drug addiction wasn't permanent, though I never regressed to spending years at a time on amphetamines. I've used mood-altering drugs for periods of varying length at various times since 1967. Amphetamines, sleeping pills, and prescription painkillers. One such spell, the most serious and protracted, began when I took painkillers after eye surgery in 1981, then kept taking them after I didn't need to. It escalated after I was almost killed by an ostrich. Ostrich attacks are rare in Tennessee, it's true, but this one really happened. On the grounds of the exotic animal park I'd established behind the House of Cash offices near my house on Old Hickory Lake, it occurred during a particularly bitter winter, when below zero temperatures had reduced our ostrich population by half. The hen of our pair wouldn't let herself be captured and taken inside the barn, so she froze to death. That, I guess, is what made her mate cranky. Before then, he'd been perfectly pleasant with me, as had all the other birds and animals, when I walked through the compound. That day, though, he was not happy to see me. I was walking through the woods in the compound when suddenly he jumped out onto the trail in front of me and crouched there with his wings spread out, hissing nastily. Man, this kind of reminds me back in the day, dude. We used to go to this church down in Florida. It was a evangelical church. And there was a back lot where they had like a little Royal Rangers post, which we were members of. I hated Royal Rangers. It's like military / Christian brainwashing, like kind of like Boy Scouts. But they had wild cranes that would fly in, and we used to chase them around because like cranes are like fearful. You know, these things would stand about 4 or 5 foot tall. But I remember we got to chasing them, and we got in the habit of chasing them because it was fun. I ain't gonna lie. And one day, man, we was chasing them, and this mama crane just turned around and started chasing us, like wings spread, pecking like crazy. And I mean, the beaks on them things are razor sharp, like it gouged your eyeball out, and we'd never been chased by one. So we like ran. We finally escaped it because it stopped running, and we turned around, and we didn't even realize that it had like 3 or 4 chicks behind it. And like baby cranes, like they're real little. It almost looked like a little herd of quail behind it or something. So I mean, we couldn't see it, and we weren't expecting it. So I don't know. That's just a random little story of my life that it just reminded me of. I digress. Nothing came of that encounter. I just stood there until he laid his wings back, quit hissing, and moved off. Then I walked on. As I walked, I plotted. He'd be waiting for me when I came back there, ready to give me the same treatment, and I couldn't have that. I was the boss. It was my land. The ostrich didn't care. When I came back, I was carrying a good stout 6-foot stick, and I was prepared to use it. And sure enough, there he was on the trail in front of me doing this thing. When he started moving toward me, I went on the offenses, taking a good hard swipe at him. I missed. He wasn't there. He was in the air, and a split second later, he was on his way down again. With that big toe of his, larger than my size 16 shoe, extended toward my stomach, he made contact. I'm sure there was never any question he wouldn't, and frankly, I got off lightly. All he did was break my 2 lower ribs and rip my stomach open down to my belt. If the belt hadn't been there good and strong, with a solid buckle, he would have spilled my guts exactly the way he meant to. As it was, he knocked me over onto my back, and I broke 3 more ribs on a rock. But I had sense enough to keep swinging the stick, so he didn't get to finish me. I scored a good hit on one of his legs, and he ran off. They cleaned my wounds, stitched me up, and sent me home, but I was nowhere near as good as new. Those 5 broken ribs hurt. That's what painkillers are for, though. So I felt perfectly justified in taking lots of them. Justification ceased to be relevant after that. Once the pain subsided completely, I knew I was taking them because I liked the way they made me feel. And while that troubled my conscience, it didn't trouble it enough to keep me from going down the old addictive road again. Soon I was going around to different doctors to keep those pills coming in the kind of quantities I needed. And when they started upsetting my digestive system, I started to drink wine to settle my stomach, which worked reasonably well. The wine also took the sharper, more uncomfortable edges off the amphetamines. I'd begun adding to the mix because I liked amphetamines. So there I was, up and running, strung out, slowed down, sped up, turned around, hung on the hook, having a ball, living in a hell. Before long, I began to get the impression that I was in trouble. I had bleeding ulcers for one thing, but I kept going anyway. The idea of taking things to their logical conclusion, just drugging and drinking until I slipped all the way out of this world, began to dance quietly around in the back of my mind. That was weirdly comforting. I went low. On tour in England in 1983, I got into the habit of going into John Carter's room to sleep in the early morning, thus avoiding June's dawn rising. John Carter was 12. One morning he looked under the bed and said, "Daddy, where did all those wine bottles come from?" I had to tell them that I got them out of the minibar and drunk them during the night. "I didn't know you drank like that," he said. I told him I'd been in a lot of pain, so I had to drink like that. I met my spider in England, Nottingham, to be precise, in the Midlands, a region hitherto unrecognized as a habitat of aggressive arachnids. Where there's a will, though, there's a way. Nottingham was the last stop on our tour, and we checked into a hotel with beautiful old wooden paneling. I was in a room with June when I got the idea. There was a Murphy bed set into one of the walls. "Look, June, I can pull this bed down and you can make it up and sleep on it." "John, that's not a bed," she said. "There's no Murphy bed there." I disagreed with her strongly. I was convinced it was there, so I proceeded to tear at the wall until the paneling started splitting, driving old dirt and splinters into my right hand. The hand was a bloody wreck by the time I understood that I'd hallucinated the Murphy bed. I hallucinated the spider, too. Saw it in the middle of the night, biting my hand, causing me intense pain. I told June about it in the morning, by which time my hand was twice its normal size. She believed me at first, just as I believed myself. I don't know what others thought when we made the story public. Cash bitten by poisonous English spider. Perhaps they considered the possibility that a miracle had occurred in Nottingham, or that the spider had arrived in my baggage, or someone else's. From some likelier part of the world, Mozambique, or Mombasa, Belize, or Brazil, or that somebody nearby was running a game park for exotic arachnids, reptiles, and worms. Perhaps they thought I was on drugs again. When I got home, my hand was just a giant ball of infection, so I had to check into Baptist Hospital and have surgery on it. I knew I'd be in there a while, so I went prepared. I hid a survival stash of Percodans, amphetamines, and Valium, a 50-dose card of Valium I'd acquired in Switzerland, in a tobacco sack tied to the back of the TV set in my room. They did the surgery on my hand, but then they discovered a worse problem in my midsection, all that internal bleeding. So back into surgery I went, this time for removal of my duodenum, parts of my stomach, and spleen, and several feet of intestine. That presented a pretty severe problem as far as maintaining my habit went, but I handled it. I had the whole card of Valium right there with me in an intensive care unit. I had a great hiding place for it too, under the bandages, over the freshly sutured incision in my belly. I managed to pull the dressing up and get it snugged in there, safe and sound. Shh. I thought I'd been really clever. A couple of days later, they couldn't wake me up. They'd get a rise out of me for a moment or two, but I'd drift straight off again, no matter what they did. That went on for a while. I really don't know how long, until, in a flash of life-saving brilliance, I understood the problem and managed despite my slurring and blurring to tell the doctor that he should investigate my dressing. He didn't get it at first. It looked fine, he said. He didn't need to take it off, but I insisted. When he peeled away what was left of the volume, or the card of volume, he found that about half the pills had already dissolved straight into my wound. I don't know if it was the volume's fault, but that was a horrible wound. It took months to heal properly. As it happened, the volume was superfluous because they treated my post-surgical pain with such drug doses of morphine that I was just about as high as I could be anyway. Lost in intensely vivid hallucinations. I half wrecked the ICU, upsetting IV poles and doing all kinds of damage. But I just had to make somebody understand about the commandos. They'd gotten into the hospital. This is where it gets crazy. And were setting up charges all around the room. Finally, someone got the message and told the flight crew. The co-pilot came on the intercom to put me at ease. This reminds me of like some Fear and Loathing shit, dude. We're going to fly this wing of the hospital away from here, he said. Get you away from these people bothering you. Good, I said. Let's take off. No sooner said than done. I looked out the window, and sure enough, our wing of the hospital had detached itself and was rolling on its takeoff run. Soon we were up, beginning our first turn over Nashville, and I could see the Cumberland River. I've actually seen the Cumberland. It's pretty. Then the green Tennessee countryside. The pilot came on the speaker. It looks like everything's all right now. I didn't think it was, as I told the flight attendant. This was a full-service hallucination. The charges still lead up here. They could still blow us up. No, she said, you're wrong. There are no charges aboard. The woman was crazy, I realized, or dense, or blind, or a member of the conspiracy against me. The charges were right there in plain sight. Look, you can see them, I urged. They're going to blow us up while we're still in the air. Somehow I got the word to the pilot, and he did a good job, turning back immediately and beginning his landing approach with further ado. The hospital building swung into sight, then slid up toward us as we made a faultless landing and eased back to our place. It was perfect but pointless. The commandos came right back, moving grimly through the ICU and laying their charges all over again. We're going to get you, Cash, said one. That was bad enough, but suddenly I was out of the ICU and in a ward, and a commando was standing in the doorway with his gun to John Carter's head. This was post-robbery. We're going to kill you and your whole family, he barked. I realized with horror that there wasn't any if or unless about it. They were just going to do it. I started screaming. When I hallucinated that intensely, the medics would respond by giving me higher doses of morphine. They didn't know who they were dealing with or what. More dope just made me more crazy. The people closest to me had had enough. Unbeknownst to me, they got together with a wonderful doctor from the Betty Ford Clinic, a great man who will remain anonymous. And in the parlance of the trade, they ran an intervention on me. I knew the doctor was coming. I was semi-alert by that time, about 20 days after the surgery, so I'd understood fine when June told me that the doctor was in town with Gene Autry. Gene was in town to buy a baseball player, and while he had got back to California post-haste, the doctor would be paying me a visit the next day. That he did, along with June, Roseanne, my mother, John Carter, Cindy, Tara, Rosie, half the people who worked for me, and all the members of my band, about 25 souls in all. Every one of them had written out something they wanted me to know about my behavior toward them. So lying right there, literally literally a captive audience. Unless I wanted to rip out a couple of IVs and risk spilling my guts on the floor, I listened. I heard about betrayals and broken promises, lies and neglect, love used and abused and abandoned and refused, trust destroyed, care turned into pain and fear. Everyone read, and all the letters had their effect on me. Again, though, it was John Carter who got through to me most clearly. His letter was about one night at the farm when I'd fallen, stumbled, and staggered, and otherwise made a fool of myself in front of his friends, embarrassing him and them terribly. I had to hold him and hug him while he read it, to keep his tears back. He hadn't wanted to write that letter, and he wanted even less to read it to me. The letters weren't designed just to vent their writers' anger, shame, or disgust at my behavior. Their greater purpose was to show me the depth of the trouble I was in, to express the love and concern for me, and to ask me to accept help to save myself. As the doctor put it, after everyone had read to me, "We all want you to get some help. We want you to go to the Betty Ford Center." Simple request, simple reply. "I'm ready to go," I croaked, barely able to get the words out. "I want to go. I want some help." I wasn't conning anyone, even myself at that moment. I knew how serious my situation was. I was wasted, weak, hallucinating on the morphine every day, very far out in the cold, just a degree or two away from the physical final end, to say nothing of madness, spiritually bankrupt, and financial ruin. I also knew that I was so close to death that if I really wanted, I could give up and go there quite easily. All the way down at the doors of death, though, I'd discover that I didn't really want to die. I just wanted the pain and trouble and heartbreak to end. And I was so tired that dying seemed like the only way to get that done. I wanted to stop hating myself too. Mine wasn't softcore, pop psychology, self-hatred. It was a profound, violent, daily holocaust of revulsion and shame. And one way or another, it had to stop. I couldn't stand it any longer. So when the intervention came, it was welcome. As my friends and family spoke, I was telling myself, this is it. This is my salvation. God has sent these people to show me a way out. I'm going to get a chance to live. I'm still absolutely convinced that the intervention was the hand of God working in my life, telling me that I still had a long way to go, a lot left to do. The amazing encouragement I got, the testimony of all those people, made me believe in myself again. But first, I had to humble myself before God. But we're going to end it there, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this crazy tale. I did want to end it on a good note. I'm a friend of Bill myself. I've openly said that on this channel multiple times. It's a crazy story. It's funny. It's humorous, but I do like the way that it ended. Of like, yeah, I mean, people need help, And if you're someone out there who is struggling, like, go and get it. There's rehab, there's AA meetings, or just people you could talk to. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. But thank you all for tuning in to Conspiracy Corner Podcast. This has been a good show. I hope you all enjoyed. Like, share, subscribe. I got 196 subscribers now, so that's our newest high score. I'm trying to get 200, so if you guys could do me a favor, if you guys enjoy the content, please do share. Even if it's just word of mouth and telling somebody about it, or actually share it, to friends or someone who you personally think would enjoy this channel. But you all have a good day.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.